This year for 2022, we got the midterms coming up in November, and the Democrats are basically in despair. But there's also six reasons to try to be hopeful for the 2022 midterms. Now it's hard not to feel depressed going into 2022 because headlines are the most recent headlines that are dominating the news sources are the Omicron variant of COVID-19, and Donald Trump continues to walk free despite his attempted coup last year, and the Republican efforts to steal the 2024 election for him are well underway after receiving no resistance from a Senate that is being held hostage by the two worst Democrats in the nation. Basically, the two worst Democrats are Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, who are closet Republicans. Um, the Democratic voters are demoralized, as evidenced by the low turnout in November's Virginia election, and the Republicans' pathetic catchphrase right now, the "Let's Go Brandon" frenzy. And yet there are tendrils of hope that are peeking out through the freeze of despair. Now the Omicron is spreading rapidly, but the hospitalization rates remain low, suggesting that it's morphing into a relatively minor cold for the vaccinated. And Trump, for his part, may actually be facing real legal consequences in 2022. And as hard as it may be to accept it, there are genuine reasons to believe that the midterm elections may not be the democracy-ending bloodbath that so many of us have been fearing. The Republican push to consolidate power and usher in a new Trump-led authoritarian state might not be as effective as the GOP is hoping for and everyone else fearing. So that means it's important to keep up the fight and resist the urge to simply give up. But we can't let the bad guys win. And here are six reasons to stay in the fight for 2022. Number one is the GOP's gerrymandering apocalypse is a dud. The press pays more attention to voter suppression techniques that make for good imagery, like denying food and water to people that are waiting in line. um, but actual election experts have been far more worried about the impact of aggressive gerrymandering this election cycle. Packing and cracking the techniques have recently allowed Republicans to gain seats nationwide, despite the declining popularity that they have, because they're not popular. After the 2020 census, the fear was Republicans would be able to redistrict themselves into power, and that was untouchable by Democratic majorities. And yet, as Paul Wadman of the Washington Post reported last week, the informed redistricting experts now say it appears that this process will look more like a wash, or even that Democrats might gain a few seats, if not more. There are many reasons for this shift in GOP fortunes, including that the Democrats are fighting back harder than expected, but a lot of it comes down to the fact that the demographic changes have been so dramatic that Republicans in many places have decided to consolidate their current position rather than take a riskier path that might expand their seats. But in the end, the Democrats should have a shot at far more seats than previously believed. Number two, the Democratic governors who may be what save us in 2024 look strong in 2022. One of Trump's strategies for stealing the 2020 election had focused on voiding out the electoral college votes from swing states that Joe Biden won. While Trump failed to get the momentum for his plan back then, the GOP controlled state legislators in place like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania seemed game to try again in 2024. They almost certainly, however, cannot succeed without the governor's cooperation. And that's why it is crucial for Democrats to win the gubernatorial elections in 2022. And there is reason to be optimistic on that front. These statewide elections are out of the reach of the gerrymandering that has captured so many state legislators for the Republicans. Many of the states that Trump wants to steal are electing governors this year, and Democrats have a strong chance of winning if they put up a fight. They have a chance to retain their seats in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, but Stacey Abrams has taken another shot at Georgia, and there's a chance to flip the governor's seats in Florida and Arizona. Um, Number three, the Senate map looks good for Democrats. If you're sick of the closet Republican senators Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, we've got good news. If Democrats gain Senate seats in 2022, these two's ability to stop all legislation of importance may disappear. And better yet, that may very well happen. In Pennsylvania, the Republican Senator Pat Toomey is retiring, leaving his seat up for grabs by one of the many popular Democrats who is running. Both North Carolina and Wisconsin are two other swing states where there's a chance that Republicans can be replaced by Democrats. Even Missouri may be in range if Republicans are foolish enough to nominate Eric Greitens. He's a repulsive specimen who was last seen being forced to give up his governor's seat after being credibly accused with photographic evidence of kidnapping and sexual assault. Number 4, Republicans are putting up a vomit-inducing set of candidates to cycle. As Igor Durish reports, Greitens is actually looking like the Republican norm for candidate choice in today's Trump-controlled GOP. In those crucial gubernatorial elections that we mentioned, this could matter a lot. Abrams, for instance, is likely to run against the charisma-free David Perdue, who's an out and proud insurrectionist. In Arizona, there's a strong chance the party goes with Kari Lake, a Trump pick who's associated with Mike Lindell and other nutty folks linked to the vote audit that Republican diehards love, but everyone else finds fucking embarrassing. And most voters oppose the insurrection, so insurrectionist candidates are going to have a harder time at the polls. The Republicans much lauded the 2021 win in the Virginia's governor race, courtesy of Glenn Youngkin, who's a bland specimen who can convincingly fake being sane to the middle of the road voters. But in California, the choice of Larry Elder, who's a loudmouth and misogynist radio talker, gave Democrat Gavin Newsom a much easier path to victory in their gubernatorial race. The Republicans look poised to nominate the more Elders and fewer Newsoms, but Democrats have a real chance to take advantage of this. Number 5, the pandemic may finally dissipate. The faux news and the Republican leaders have convinced their voters to reject the vaccine and draw the pandemic out as long as possible to hurt Biden and the Democrats. And by offering themselves up to the virus, Republicans have kept case and death rates up at a steady clip, sowing the malaise that led directly to Biden's declining approval numbers. The Omicron started to wash over the country like a tidal wave, infecting hundreds of thousands of people a day. And people are now getting infected at higher rates than they are getting their first vaccine. And that fucking sucks, but the silver lining is all those unvaccinated Republicans are now getting their inoculations the hard way. And building immunity through infection ain't ideal, but it still fucking works. And there's a very real chance that the pandemic is mostly in the rearview mirror next fall, and Democrats reap the rewards of getting us through this crisis. Number 6, the Supreme Court may awake a sleeping giant. People are going to be very angry if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, as it is widely expected to do so. Abortion rights are popular, and so is the common wisdom that has been the Supreme Court will find some ways to keep restricting access throughout without actually creating the Roe is overturned headlines that could lead to an electoral backlash against Republicans. But the arguments before the court earlier this month in the Mississippi abortion case show that 5 out of the 9 justices seemed way too invested in ending the reproductive rights to worry over much about the political impacts. Sure, Chief Justice John Roberts still wants to preserve the court's unearned reputation for prudence and moderation, but he's simply outvoted by the slobbering misogynists on the bench. If there is, as expected, a national run to pass abortion laws, which is often enforced with bounty hunter systems across states in the summer and fall, that will likely wake up a lot of people who have checked out of politics since Biden's win. And nor is there any reason to strike a cynical pose of anger as Democrats were pressing a political advantage on this. If Democrats can secure a stronger majority in Congress in 2022, they can actually pass a bill that will overrule any Roe overturned the Supreme Court coughs up. Saving the reproductive rights cannot be disentangled from saving either the Democratic Party or democracy itself. And to be clear, much of this optimistic outlook is speculative or contingent. It could very well be that 2022 is an extension of 2021, where the Democratic demoralization keeps snowballing, leading to Republican sweeps in the midterms. If that happens, we may be looking back on these days and seeing an inexorable path to fascism. But right now, hope is simply not lost. There are a lot of levers that can be pulled to keep Republicans from crushing the Democrats in 2022, and then voiding out any election protections that are needed to keep Trump from stealing the 2024 election. Saving the country means fighting for it. but it's hard for people to fight unless they can retain some hope of prevailing. The good news is that there are a lot of reasons to feel hopeful. Pro-democracy forces have the numbers and they can still be translated into power, or at least for now. The next year will be a wild ride, but in the end, we may be looking at a repeat of 2020 where hope bested denialism, and the moment for saving ourselves is not yet past, but we still have a chance if we seize it. So if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King, and also hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when a new video comes out, and thanks for listening.